The bridge of the Terran ship Vanguard was eerily quiet, save for the soft hum of the control systems and the low murmur of distant voices over comms. Eliana Voss, captain of the ship, stood at the helm, her hands resting lightly on the controls, her gaze fixed on the holographic map spread out before her. The map was a collection of thousands of data points, some familiar, some entirely new. Each point seemed to vibrate with the promise of something vast, something profound, and it was there, just beyond the edge of known space. Earth. The legend that had been passed down from generation to generation, dismissed as a fable by most, dismissed as a dangerous obsession by others. But the Vanguard had the data to prove it. The subtle anomaly in the energy readings, the fragment of human transmission buried within the cosmic noise, and the satellite debris that had been recently unearthed by an unassuming exploration vessel, deep in the uncharted zones. All the signs pointed to one thing: Earth wasn't just a myth. It was real. Eliana let out a breath, steadying herself. There was a tremor of excitement within her, but she couldn't afford to show it. Not yet. Not to the crew. Not until they had something tangible, something more than a map, more than hope. She was a captain, and her duty was to lead with calm precision. Behind her, First Officer Jalen stood at his station, his arms crossed over his chest as he watched the map with a skeptical frown. His brow was furrowed, his eyes narrowed. He was one of the few who had refused to believe in Earth's existence, even when presented with the evidence. The stories of human explorers, the distant references to old Earth, the tales of ancient ruins scattered across the galaxy, Jalen had dismissed them all as fanciful stories, as relics of a time long past. To him, they were the misguided reveries of a people who had once been powerful, but were now lost to history. "They'll never believe this," Jalen muttered under his breath, his voice low and tinged with disbelief. His gaze flickered to the controls, then back to the map, as if he were trying to convince himself that what he was seeing wasn't real. Eliana glanced over her shoulder, her lips curving into a thin smile. "They'll have no choice." She paused for a moment before adding, "If the data's right, we'll be the first to find it. Earth, the cradle of humanity. After all this time, we're going to prove that the legends were true." Jalen shook his head slowly, but there was no doubt in his eyes. His disbelief was a facade, slipping away like sand through his fingers. He knew, as well as Eliana did, that this wasn't just about the discovery of a lost world. This was the culmination of centuries of searching, of questing into the unknown. And it could very well change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. "We'll need to prepare for every eventuality," Eliana said, her tone shifting to something more serious, more calculated. "The core worlds aren't going to just let this slide. You know as well as I do that this," she gestured to the holomap, "changes everything. Earth isn't just a symbol of the past, it's the key to our future." There was a moment of tense silence on the bridge, the weight of her words settling in the air. The crew felt it too. Some of them had been raised on stories of Earth, legends passed down from their parents, from their grandparents. Some were cynical about the myth, thinking it was all just fantasy. But for a few, it had always been a dream, an unreachable star. The idea of returning to Earth, of reconnecting with the place where humanity had once flourished, was a concept as big as the galaxy itself. But the silence didn't last long. A sharp, crackling sound burst from the comms panel, pulling everyone's attention toward the disturbance. The ship's sensors flared, their warnings filling the air. Eliana's eyes widened as a cold dread swept over her. Something was wrong. "Captain, we're detecting a massive ship on a collision course, Lieutenant." Kira, the ship's sensor officer, called out, her voice tight with urgency. "It's not responding to hails, it's closing in fast." Jalen's voice was sharp. "What kind of ship? We don't recognize the signature." Eliana's fingers flew over the console, bringing up the external camera feeds. Her breath caught in her throat. There, just at the edge of the viewport, was a shadow, a dark shape that defied all the known ship classifications. It was enormous, perhaps the size of a battleship or larger. Its surface shimmered with a strange, almost organic quality, pulsing with energy that seemed both unnatural and unnerving. The craft's hull was sleek but jagged, as though designed to slice through space itself. It didn't belong to any known alien species. There were no records of ships like this, no intel reports. Is it? Jalen's voice trailed off. Disbelief. Lining his words, is that a warship? Eliana didn't respond immediately. She didn't need to. The answer was written in the very way the ship moved, the aggressive angle at which it approached. This wasn't a diplomatic envoy. This was an enemy ship, and it was intent on making its presence known. Captain, Lieutenant Kira called out again, her voice now laced with panic. They've locked weapons on us. This isn't a warning shot. Eliana's mind raced, her body already bracing for impact. Who were they? Whoever it was, they knew about Earth, and they weren't happy to see Terrans getting close. Open a comm channel, Eliana ordered, her voice clipped and calm. I want to speak to them. Static crackled in her earpiece as the comm channel opened, followed by the distorted alien voice that emerged, its tone cold and commanding. You are trespassing in the Forbidden Zone, Terrans. Leave now, or face extinction. Eliana's grip tightened on the controls, and for a brief moment she could feel the weight of the universe pressing down on her shoulders. They knew about Earth. They knew everything, and they were angry. The stars seemed to freeze around her as the implications hit her all at once. This wasn't a discovery. This was a war. The moment the alien warship's weapons charged up, Eliana's stomach twisted in a knot. Her fingers flew over the console, instinctively reaching for every tool she had at her disposal. Every Terran ship was equipped with advanced shielding, but this was different. Whatever that enemy ship was, it wasn't like anything humanity had faced before. And now, with the shields barely holding, Eliana realized how much they were at the mercy of this new terrifying foe. The Vanguard shook violently as the first wave of energy blasts hit. A deep, resonating thrum reverberated through the hull, making the deck tremble beneath her boots. Alarms screamed, lights flickering in sync with the violent jolts. The shields held, but just barely. Her crew's faces were pale, eyes wide with the understanding that this was no drill. Status report, Eliana barked, her voice carrying the weight of her command. She turned to Kira, her sensor officer, who was frantically working at her console, sweat dripping down her brow. We're losing shield strength rapidly, Captain, Kira replied, her voice cracking. The ship's integrity is holding, but we can't take another hit like that. Eliana's mind raced. They had to buy themselves time. They needed to fight back. But the unknown ship's firepower was beyond anything they had seen before. It wasn't just the sheer strength of their weapons, it was their precision. This wasn't a random assault. It was calculated. Targeted. Activate evasive maneuvers, Eliana ordered, and boost the shields to full capacity. Hold them off as long as you can. Jalen, who had been watching from the tactical display, shot her a look, his expression grim. That won't be enough, Captain. We're not going to survive if we stay on this trajectory. Eliana knew he was. Right, but they couldn't just run. Not when they were so close to Earth to uncovering the truths that had been buried for so long. Can we outrun them? Jalen asked, his voice tinged with desperation. We could try, Eliana replied, her gaze fixed on the oncoming warship. But if they're targeting us now, they'll follow us across the stars, and we won't have the firepower to stop them. The decision was clear. They couldn't run. They had to stand their ground. Prepare the fighters, Eliana ordered, locking eyes with Jalen. It's time we showed them that Terrans aren't so easily hunted. The Vanguard wasn't equipped for a full-scale space battle. It was a scout ship, light, fast and designed for exploration. But the Terran fleet was resourceful, and their fighters, though small, were incredibly nimble and well-armed for their size. Eliana's voice grew firm as she addressed the crew. We may be outnumbered and outgunned, but we are not without hope. We will defend this ship. We will defend Earth. Her eyes swept across the bridge. Every pilot on standby, get ready. We're going to make them regret underestimating us. Seconds felt like hours as the alien ship closed in, its enormous bulk casting a shadow over the Vanguard. Through the viewport, Eliana could see its weapons now charging up, the deadly, pulsating energy ready to strike again. Deploy fighters, she commanded, her voice cold, cutting through the tension. A dozen sleek Terran fighters shot out from the Vanguard's hangar bay, their engines roaring as they broke free into the vastness of space. They were small, agile, and deadly, each ship designed for rapid deployment and combat. Eliana watched as the fighters formed into tight formation, weaving through space with the precision of a seasoned squadron. As they drew closer to the alien ship, the fighters unleashed a barrage of pulse lasers and missiles, sending them crashing against the warship's shields. The enemy ship responded with swift counterattacks, energy beams slicing through the void, targeting the smaller ships with terrifying accuracy. One of the Terran fighters exploded in a burst of brilliant light, disintegrating before Eliana's eyes. Her heart skipped a beat, but she quickly pushed the emotion down. There was no time for hesitation. "Keep pushing forward, pilots," Eliana commanded through the comms, her voice filled with steel. "Target their weak points, focus on the engines. We need to slow them down." But the enemy ship, despite its immense size, was swift and relentless. Each move it made seemed deliberate, calculated to disable rather than destroy, as though it were studying them, learning their tactics. Another fighter vanished into the void, another. And yet the remaining pilots pressed on. Their spirit was unbroken. In the chaos of battle, Eliana's thoughts turned back to Earth. What were they protecting? What secrets lay beneath its surface, hidden for centuries? She could feel the weight of that question pressing on her chest. If they lost this battle, they might never get the chance to answer it. "Captain, we have incoming reinforcements, Lieutenant." Kira's voice broke through the battle's roar. "Another fleet, this time human signatures." Eliana's breath caught. Reinforcements. Could it be? Her mind raced as she looked back at the star map. The coordinates they had discovered, the anomalous signals. Was this the beginning of something more? Had humanity's reach spread so far? Were there others like them, survivors from Earth who had never forgotten? Then, from the depths of space, came the unmistakable sight of a Terran fleet. The ships were large, their metal hulls gleaming with the insignia of the Terran Alliance, but their design was different, sleeker, more advanced. These weren't just surviving ships, they were warships, each one bristling with weaponry. "Captain, the fleet's joining the fight," Jalen called out, his voice filled with awe. "They're pushing the enemy back." Eliana's heart skipped a beat. The tides of battle were shifting. The enemy warship hesitated for a brief moment as if thrown off balance by the sudden appearance of the Terran reinforcements. But then, something unexpected happened. The alien ship's communication systems flickered, a strange pattern emerging on the comms screen. "Captain," Kira's voice, was now tinged with confusion. "They're broadcasting a signal, a message, but it's encrypted." Eliana's instincts flared. They had no time to decrypt anything. This was a battle for survival. But then the message began to play, a voice emerging from the static. "You cannot win, Terrans," the voice growled, a rasping tone that sent chills down Eliana's spine. "Earth is not yours to reclaim. It is ours." The statement was a declaration of war, but it also held something deeper. A warning. Eliana's gaze hardened as she turned toward the viewport. There, against the backdrop of stars, Earth was waiting, waiting to be found, but also waiting to be claimed. The message from the alien warship echoed in Eliana's mind, its words haunting her even as the battle raged around her. "Earth is not yours to reclaim, it is ours." Who were they? Why had they waited so long to reveal themselves? And what did they mean by "Earth is ours"? Eliana's thoughts were interrupted by the sudden jolt of the Vanguard, followed by the piercing scream of the battle alarms. The enemy warship had launched a second wave of energy blasts, this time more concentrated, more powerful. A second fighter was lost in an instant, its engine exploding in a violent flare. The fighters, despite their agility, were no match for the relentless firepower of the alien ship. "Shields are failing, Captain." Kira's voice was frantic. "We can't keep this up much longer." Eliana's mind raced. The reinforcements were still engaging the enemy fleet, but the Vanguard was exposed. Too small, too vulnerable to hold its ground without stronger support. The stakes had never been higher. The Terran fleet, while formidable, was still far, outnumbered by the alien warships. They were outgunned, outclassed, and outmatched. The Terran forces were losing ground, and soon the Vanguard would be next. "We need to disable their ship," Ileana said, her voice sharp with determination. "Kira, can you get us a reading on their weak points? I need something we can exploit." Kira's hands flew over the console, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Their shields are almost entirely opaque, Captain, but their engines, they're not as heavily protected as the rest of the ship. If we can disrupt their propulsion system, we might buy enough time for the fleet to close in." Ileana's mind was already calculating. If they could disable the alien ship's engines, it would be forced to stop or retreat. The Terran fleet could then converge and deal a decisive blow. It was a risk, an extremely dangerous one, but it was their best chance. "Jalen," Ileana called, her voice steady despite the growing pressure. "I need you to lead a boarding team. We're going to infiltrate their ship." Jalen's eyes widened in disbelief. "Board their ship? Are you out of your mind? Captain, we're barely holding on ourselves. You're asking us to go on a suicide." "Mission!" Ileana's gaze hardened. "We have no choice. We take their engines out and we turn the tide of this battle. You'll have the support of the Vanguard's remaining fighters to cover your approach, but you'll need to move fast. I'll be coordinating from here." Jalen didn't hesitate. He knew that the decision was made, and the fate of the Vanguard, and possibly Earth, hung in the balance. He snapped to attention, his expression now one of resolve. "Understood, Captain." Without another word, he turned, gathering a small team of highly trained soldiers. They were the best, the bravest, the ones who had been through hell in countless simulations, and now they were about to face an enemy far more dangerous than any simulation could prepare them for. As Jalen and his team suited up for the boarding mission, Ileana turned her attention to the battlefield. The Terran fleet was now engaged in a full-scale battle with the alien warships. The sky was a maelstrom of fire and destruction. Explosions rippled through the blackness of space, illuminating the stars in bursts of violent light. The fighter jets streaked in and out of combat, dodging energy blasts and returning fire with every ounce of power their engines could muster. But no matter how hard they fought, the enemy ship remained an immovable force. Its weapons were relentless, its shields seemingly impervious. And all the while, the alien warship's presence in the sky felt more and more like a harbinger of doom. "Jalen, get your team ready," Ileana's voice came through the comms, cold and focused. "We're about to make our move." The team launched from the Vanguard's hangar, their sleek black boarding pods cutting through space like arrows. They were armed with specialized breaching tools designed to slice through the alien ship's hull and gain access to its interior. It was a dangerous gambit, but it was their only shot at disabling the enemy's propulsion systems. As they approached the enemy ship, the hull's strange, iridescent surface gleamed under the light of distant stars. It seemed almost alive, shifting and pulsing with an energy that made Ileana's skin crawl. The ship was a marvel of alien technology, a perfect blend of organic and synthetic materials that seemed to blur the line between biology and machine. The closer Jalen's team got, the more they could sense the ship's alien nature. It wasn't like anything they'd ever encountered. It was as if the vessel itself was aware of their presence, watching, waiting, ready to breach in 3. Jalen's voice crackled over the comms. 2, 1. There was a sudden, deafening crack as the boarding pod slammed into the hull of the alien warship, the impact sending shockwaves through the tiny craft. The outer layers of the ship were thick, but the Terran breaching tools tore through it with brutal efficiency. The team emerged from their pods, weapons raised, their steps heavy with the knowledge that every second counted. "Stay sharp," Jalen commanded, his voice low but steady. "We're in. Move out." The alien ship's interior was unlike anything they had ever seen. The walls seemed to pulse with a soft, eerie glow, casting strange shadows on the floor. The air was thick with a low hum that reverberated through the team's bones. It was as if the ship was alive, its very being alive with alien energy. They moved quickly, their boots clanging softly against the metallic surface as they navigated through the twisting corridors. Every corner felt like it might hide a deadly surprise. Every flicker of light made their hearts race. The further they went, the more they realized that they weren't just fighting an enemy. They were fighting something otherworldly, something far more ancient and powerful than they could have ever anticipated. "We've reached the engine core," one of the soldiers said over the comms, her voice barely above a whisper. "This is it." Jalen nodded. The core was heavily guarded. There were strange biomechanical sentries patrolling the area, humanoid in shape but with eyes that glowed with an unsettling light. Their presence felt like a warning, a challenge to anyone who dared breach the ship. "We take them out," Jalen ordered. "On my mark." But just as they prepared to move, the ship's systems flickered, and a voice, cold, mechanical, and unmistakably alien, spoke over the comms. "You have made a grave mistake, Terrans," the voice echoed, sending a chill down Jalen's spine. "This world is not your salvation, it is your doom." Before they could react, the entire ship trembled, as if it had come alive, preparing to strike back. The alien voice echoed in Jalen's mind, seeping into his thoughts with a chilling certainty. "This world is not your salvation, it is your doom." The words reverberated, and for a moment the entire team stood frozen, their weapons held tightly in shaking hands. They were inside the heart of the enemy's ship, surrounded by a foreign energy that felt more like an oppressive presence than a mere force of physics. It was as if the ship itself knew they were there, that it had anticipated their every move, and now it was about to show them just how futile their efforts were. A tremor rumbled through the corridors, as if the ship was shifting in response to the aliens' words. Jalen's heart pounded in his chest. The biomechanical sentries, tall, sleek, with pale, glowing eyes, had paused, their heads swiveling in unison toward the team. They were aware, and they were preparing for something. "Get ready," Jalen hissed under his breath, motioning for his team to fall into position. Every instinct in his body told him this wasn't just a standard mission. This was a test of survival, of humanity's place in the galaxy. This alien force didn't just want to stop them, it wanted to erase them, to bury Earth's legacy under the weight of its own unrelenting power. But Jalen had a different plan. He wasn't about to let that happen. "On my mark, fire!" The first shots rang out, loud and sharp in the confined space, but the biomechanical sentries moved faster than Jalen had anticipated, their limbs extended with terrifying precision, their bodies shifting like fluid metal. One of the soldiers fell in an instant, a burst of energy searing through her chest. The others moved quickly, ducking behind cover, but the enemy was relentless. The sentries' weapons fired streams of searing plasma, lighting up the dark corridors with blinding flashes. Jalen's thoughts raced as he aimed his own weapon at one of the sentries. He pulled the trigger, the shot finding its mark in the center of the alien's chest, but the creature barely flinched. Instead, it lunged, a jagged limb stretching toward him. "Move!" he shouted, diving to the side just in time to avoid the swipe. His heart was racing. This was not just a battle. It was a nightmare brought to life. These weren't soldiers. They were something else entirely. A species that had long mastered the art of war. The team fought fiercely, their own weapons cracking through the air with deadly force. But the sentries were everywhere, their glowing eyes tracking every move, every heartbeat. And the deeper they went into the heart of the ship, the more they realized just how far-reaching this nightmare was. This wasn't just an alien warship. It was a living, breathing weapon, its walls pulsing with unnatural energy, its very existence an affront to everything the Terrans had ever known. "Jalen!" A voice crackled over his comms, cutting through the chaos. It was Kira. "You need to disable the propulsion core now. We're barely holding off the enemy fleet, and their reinforcements are coming. You have minutes at most." Jalen's eyes darted toward the massive, pulsating engine at the center of the room. The core was unlike anything he had ever seen. It was a twisting mass of energy, glowing a deep, unsettling purple, tendrils of light radiating from it like the veins of some ancient beast. The very air around it felt charged, as if every molecule in the room was vibrating with an energy that didn't belong. "I've got it," shouted one of the soldiers, a tech specialist, as he sprinted toward a control panel beside the engine. He quickly began inputting commands, his hands flying over the interface with rapid precision. The rest of the team continued to hold off the sentries, trying to buy him the time he needed. But just as the tech specialist was about to complete the sequence, a shrill screech filled the room, a deep, resonating sound that seemed to come from the very walls themselves. The lights flickered and then went out entirely, plunging them into total darkness. For a moment, the team was paralyzed, unable to see anything beyond the faint glow of the alien engine. Then a new presence made itself known. From the shadows of the chamber, an enormous figure emerged, its silhouette towering over them. It was humanoid in shape, but its proportions were twisted, unnatural. Its eyes were a fierce, glowing red, and its body was covered in an organic armor that shifted and pulsed with the same eerie light as the ship itself. This was no mere sentry. This was something different, something far more dangerous. "You think you can destroy what is eternal?" The figure's voice was like 1,000 whispers, its tone dripping with disdain. "So you are ants, scrambling at the feet of giants." Jalen's blood ran cold. The creature wasn't just speaking to them, it was speaking of something far greater, something beyond their understanding. It wasn't just an alien warship they had boarded. It was a part of something much more ancient, something that had been waiting for humanity to discover its presence. "You do not know what you are up against," the figure continued, its voice colder than space itself. "You are playing with forces beyond your comprehension. This ship is only one of many, and we are the ones who will bring the end of your kind." Eliana's voice crackled over the comms, her voice strained but clear. "Jalen, you have to destroy the engine, now." Jalen's mind flashed back to Earth, the home they were fighting for, the world they couldn't afford to lose. He clenched his fists, the weight of the decision pressing down on him. They didn't have the luxury of understanding this alien force. All they had was this one moment, this one chance. He turned to his team, determination in his eyes. "We fight to the end." And then, without another word, he charged. His team followed, guns blazing as they surged toward the heart of the engine. The sentries lunged at them, but Jalen was too quick. His mind was focused, and his body moved like it had been trained for this very moment. He reached the control panel, his hands moving quickly to complete the sequence. The air crackled with energy, and the alien figure loomed behind them. Its step slow but deliberate. The seconds felt like hours. Every heartbeat was a drumbeat of finality. The tech specialist hit the final command. There was a split second of silence. Then an explosion of light and sound filled the chamber as the engine's core began to destabilize. The entire ship groaned, its walls shaking violently. "We've done it," Jalen whispered, a look of disbelief on his face. But there was no time to celebrate. The ship's death throes were just beginning. The alien figure's voice came one last time, filled with rage. "You may have won this battle, Terrans, but you will never escape the reckoning. Earth will fall. You will fall." With that, the ship began to collapse in on itself, the propulsion core destabilizing and sending shockwaves through its very structure. The Vanguard had bought time, but how much? Jalen's team ran, sprinting toward their boarding pods. The walls buckled around them as the ship shuddered, sending a final warning before it imploded. They had to escape, now. The Vanguard had done its part, and now humanity's reckoning was upon them. The battle had only just begun. The battle for Earth is far from over. What will happen next in the conflict between the Terrans and the alien forces that claim the planet as their own? Leave your thoughts below and share this video if you believe that humanity's fight has only just begun.